Hi everyone, Elliott here. This is my home network tour for 2025, which is a follow-on video from the video I last made in 2022 of my home network. So I'm starting this video today in my hallway cabinet, and what has changed since the last home network tour is I now have a VoIP solution. I have a Vonage VoIP box here which provides my landline service at home. Of course, above that, like the previous home network tour, I still have my Dedicated Vigor 2962 router. I then of course have my Cat 6 patch panel, again the same as the last network tour, and I've moved my Cisco SG350X-24P 24 port PoE layer 3 10 gig stackable switch to the top of the rack. Of course I have two internet connections, each with their own VDSL modem. I have a modem here on the left for my PlusNet connection, and I have a second modem here on the right for my Zen connection. Both of these modems are the Huawei modems that BT used to supply back in the day. I know they're old now, but of course they still work reliably. My one new rack server in here has now gone, as I've got a new server in the loft. As for what else is in this area, down here I have my QNAP TVS 672 XT NAS box. It has 30 GB of DDR4 memory. It has 6 Western Digital Red Pro hard drives. 5 of them are in RAID 6 plus a hot spare, and it has two 2TB Western Digital M.2 NVMe SSDs inside in RAID 1. So that's the configuration of my NAS currently. So essentially 6 GB DVD drives plus two 2TB SSDs inside in RAID 1, and of course I am now running the QTS Hero OS as this NAS supports it. That's basically QNAP's higher end NAS, which runs the file system that I can't think off the top of my head, but I'll put a note in the video description about that. So the end of the thing that really in this area is, like last time, up in this compartment up here I've got my Smart Things hub and my Hive hub, which of course connect back into the switch. Anyway, I shall now continue the video upstairs in the spare bedroom, where I've got some stuff up there. I am now upstairs in the spare bedroom, and behind the printer, or behind the actual sort of low level sort of storage unit, I have a Cisco CBS250-8BP-D 8-port PoE switch, which has a feed from my core switch, which you saw in the previous segment of the video. The switch behind there also has a redundant link to the switch in my bedroom, but then of course that switch in my bedroom also has a link to the core switch in the hallway cabinet. So essentially the hallway cabinet feeds the switch in my bedroom and the switch up here, and then there's a sort of backup link between the switch in this room as well as to my bedroom. So in here got a Canon A3 Pro 200 printer, and then of course got my other Canon MFD 752 all-in-one multifunction device with the optional paper door at the bottom. I also have my 3D printer over here. It's a Creality Ender S2 Neo, and I also have the Creality Sonic Pad, as well as a PoE powered IP cam inside, hence why I have a PoE switch in here. I also have an old Epson printer down there in the middle, although that's just a Wi-Fi device. Anyway, that is what is in the spare bedroom currently. So essentially it's just two printers along with my 3D printer, and of course the switch behind there, which of course is fed off the core switch in a hallway cabinet, as well as the switch in my bedroom. Anyway, I shall next continue the video in the loft. We are now in the loft, and on the left you have my 1500 volt amp APC UPS, which is a network enabled UPS and is connected to my core switch via an Ethernet cable. To the right of that we have my second hand but newish Dell R530 server, which has replaced my previous one new rack server that you saw in my last home network tour. the specs of it are as follows. It has two Intel E5 2630 V4 CPUs running at 2.2 GHz. Each CPU has 10 cores and 20 threads for a total of 20 cores and 40 threads across the two CPUs. It has 96 GB of DDR4 memory. It has 4 times 1 gigabit network adapters inside it. It has dual hot swappable 750 watt power supplies. It has iDRAC 8 Enterprise with its own dedicated network adapter. It has a PoE H7030 Mini RAID controller. It has two 240 GB Seagate Iron Wolf SSDs in RAID 1 for the boot drive. It has two 6TB 7200 RPM Tibisha drives in RAID 1 for the Hyper-V VMs, although I'm probably going to replace those at some point with either a 1 or 2 TB SSDs in RAID 1, as well as the 6TB capacity is just far too large for what I need for my Hyper-V VMs, and getting SSDs for the VMs will be beneficial. It also has a single 10TB 7200 RPM Tibisha drive acting as a backup to my NAS box in the hallway cupboard, so that's just a single 10TB drive. And the server also has one 8TB drive as well as an additional 6TB drive for CCTV purposes, and those two drives are the WD purple, so essentially the far two left bays are the actual boot drives, then bay essentially 3 and 4 are the drives for the Hyper-V VMs. Bay 5 or bay 6 is not used, and then the last two bays at the end are the 8 and 6TB WD purple drive for the CCTV purposes. And then lastly, the last thing to mention is that on top of the server we have an APC transfer switch which feeds the UPS, so essentially it's dual input to a single output kind of thing, where one input is fed off a circuit on one RCD and then the other input is fed off a circuit on the other RCD. So essentially in my house I've got like a split load board with two RCDs, so should either RCD trip and the other RCD remain on, the APC transfer switch will remain inactive and will remain powering my UPS on the left, which of course powers everything in here, as well as the network cabinet which I showed you at the beginning of the video. So I think that's pretty much everything that's in the loft. Of course, additionally just the sort of monitor there, but that's pretty obvious. So I will next continue the video in the kitchen. I am now in the kitchen, and what has changed in here since my last home network tour is that I've removed the UPS, as it was not overly essential for things like the set-top box, the amplifier, the network streamer and the home theatre PC, HPC for short. And I've also now turned my home theatre PC off and only turn it on when I'm actually using it. That way, by having my HPC turned off and the UPS removed from the equation, I have saved some energy. The other thing which has changed in here since the last home network tour is that my 8-port Cisco switch down there at the bottom now has a redundant link to the shed switch, so both the switch in here, the kitchen, as well as the switch in my shed, each have their own sort of primary link to the switch in my hallway cabinet, and then there's now a backup redundant link between the switch in this kitchen and the switch in the shed. Other than that, I don't think there's a massive amount which has changed in here. So of course I've got my home theatre PC there, which is turned off. Still the same Denon amplifier and Denon network streamer, same Blu-ray player and set-top box. Of course got a new landline phone, and of course that phone is now fed off the Vonage VoIP box that I showed you at the beginning of the video. But I think the TV is the same as is the Alexa device there. So anyway, that concludes the kitchen, and I shall now continue the video in the shed. I am now in the shed, and up on the shelf up here we have my 4-bay QNAP NAS box that has 4 10TB drives in RAID 6. That's the same as the last home network tour, as is the 850 volt amp APC UPS to the right of it. I still have my old Amazon Alexa device there as well as the actual 10 port Cisco switch, which I think I had the same in the last video. This is a Cisco SG250 10p PoE switch, but as you see, that port there on the right goes to the hallway cabinet, but then of course port 9, the blue cable, that now goes to the actual kitchen switch which I showed you in the previous segment of the video. And of course all these ports then feed stuff like the IP cameras around the shed, as well as the access point up here, as well as the bench port under there. You might be able to see the actual network ports up there, so of course you've now got two of them. One goes to the kitchen and one goes to the hallway cabinet. So I think that pretty much concludes what is in this shed. The only other thing is of course I've got a Phillips shoe hub there for the garden spotlights, which is connected by this green cable here. So essentially these two green on the end are the NAS box up there. The orange one is the access point. These three black ones are the IP cameras. Of course that green one is the Phillips shoe hub, as I just said. This one here is the bench port down under there. Of course this blue one is the switch in the kitchen, and then finally this one here is the car switch in the hallway cabinet. Anyway, this concludes the shed, and I shall now continue the video in my bedroom. We are now in my bedroom, and the only thing that has really changed in here since the last home network tour is that my 8-port Cisco switch under my turntable just there now has a backup redundant link to the switch upstairs in the spare bedroom. So as I said earlier, the switch upstairs in the spare bedroom as well as the switch there under my turntable each have a link to the main core switch in the hallway cabinet, and then of course there's a backup link between that switch under my turntable and the switch upstairs in the spare bedroom. My desktop is still fed off the 10 gig fibre link to the core switch in the hallway cabinet, and I think my monitors are the same as last time. So that switch under my turntable essentially feeds my Yamaha AV receiver. It also feeds a 1 gigabit connection on my PC, which I don't really use. I normally keep that interface disabled. And it also feeds the actual monitor, as they have a USB Ethernet dock built into them. So I think that concludes what's in my bedroom. The specs of my PC are the same, I think, but basically it's an i7 8700K. It's got a 500 gigabyte Samsung SSD, as well as a 1 terabyte NVMe Samsung SSD, gigabyte RTX 2070, and then pretty much just the same things as in my last home network tour. So I think that pretty much concludes my home network tour. How everything is physically connected together, I'll put a link in the description to a diagram, as it's easier for you just to look at that than rather than me try to explain things. So for example, at the beginning of the video, between my NAS box and my core switch there's two fibre links between them in an LACP bond, but I didn't say that at the time. So if you want to know how things are physically connected, look at the diagram that I've linked in the video description. And the only other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that my main Red Vigor 2962 router in the hallway cabinet, that also forms IPsec VPNs to other remote sites I manage for Wi-Fi purposes. So essentially I have 3 other sites that I look after Wi-Fi for, and of course they form IPsec VPNs back to my Draytech router, which of course I then have a unified network server running on one of my VMs. So I think that concludes my home network tour for 2025. If there's anything I've missed, I'll put a note in the description, or I'll put an edit on the screen. But can I say thanks for watching, and until my next home network tour, whenever that is, thanks and goodbye.